Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Canada has a rich and fascinating history that spans thousands of years, from the indigenous cultures that first inhabited the land to the arrival of European explorers and the creation of the modern Canadian state. In this script, we'll explore the key events and figures that have shaped Canadian history. Part 1. Indigenous Cultures. Indigenous cultures have a long and complex history in what is now Canada. Before the arrival of European explorers, there were many different indigenous communities spread across the country, each with their own unique languages, social structures, and spiritual beliefs. In the north, the Inuit have lived in Canada for thousands of years, developing a unique way of life that is tied closely to the harsh Arctic environment. They are known for their hunting and fishing skills, as well as their intricate carvings and artwork. In the east, the Iroquois and Huron were prominent indigenous communities, with complex political structures and sophisticated farming techniques. They lived in longhouses and had extensive trade networks with other indigenous communities, as well as European explorers. In the west, the Haida and Tlingit were skilled artists and craftsmen, known for their totem poles, masks, and other intricate wood carvings. They also had sophisticated social structures, with clans and hereditary chiefs. Throughout Canada, indigenous communities lived in harmony with the land, relying on hunting, fishing, and gathering to sustain their way of life. They had a deep spiritual connection to the natural world, and their cultural practices and ceremonies often revolved around the changing seasons and the rhythms of nature. However, the arrival of European explorers and settlers had a profound impact on indigenous communities. The fur trade and the establishment of permanent settlements disrupted traditional indigenous ways of life, and European diseases had devastating effects on indigenous populations. The forced removal of indigenous communities from their lands and the residential school system also had lasting effects on indigenous cultures, leading to trauma and loss of cultural identity. Today, indigenous communities continue to fight for their rights and to preserve their cultural heritage. They are an important part of Canada's history and culture, and their contributions and perspectives are increasingly being recognized and celebrated. Part 2. European Explorers. In the 16th and 17th centuries, European explorers began to arrive in what is now Canada, seeking to expand their empires and find new trade routes to Asia. These explorers were primarily from France and England, with some Spanish and Portuguese explorers also making their way to Canada's shores. One of the most famous French explorers was Jacques Cartier, who made 3 voyages to Canada in the mid-16th century. On his second voyage, he sailed up the St. Lawrence River and established the first French settlement in Canada, which he called Hochelaga. He also claimed the region for France and traded with local indigenous communities. Another prominent French explorer was Samuel de Champlain, who founded the city of Quebec in 1608 and established the first French colony in Canada. He had extensive knowledge of the indigenous cultures and languages in the region and forged alliances with various indigenous communities, including the Algonquin and Huron. On the English side, explorers such as John Cabot and Martin Frobisher made early voyages to Canada in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. However, it was not until the 17th century that the English established permanent settlements in Canada. The English established the Hudson's Bay Company in 1670, which became a dominant force in the fur trade in Canada. The company established trading posts across Canada and had extensive interactions with indigenous communities. European explorers had a profound impact on Canada, introducing new technologies, religions, and cultural practices. However, they also had a significant impact on the indigenous communities they encountered, often leading to conflict, disease, and the forced displacement of indigenous communities from their lands. Today, the legacy of European exploration in Canada is still felt, with French and English language and culture being prominent in certain regions. However, there is also a growing recognition of the contributions and perspectives of indigenous peoples, and efforts are being made to address the injustices and trauma inflicted on indigenous communities through colonization. Part 3. French and British colonization. In the 18th century, France and Britain fought for control of Canada, resulting in a series of wars that lasted for decades. The conflict culminated in the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, in which the British emerged victorious and gained control of Canada. French colonization in Canada began with the arrival of Jacques Cartier in the mid-16th century. The French established permanent settlements in Quebec and Montreal in the 17th century and established a fur trade with indigenous communities. The French also had close relationships with indigenous allies, such as the Huron, who helped them in their wars against the British. The British, for their part, established colonies in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Hudson Bay in the 17th and 18th centuries. They also had extensive involvement in the fur trade and established trading posts across Canada. However, the British also had conflicts with Indigenous communities, particularly the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, who were allies of the French. The 7 Years' War saw the British gain control of Canada and establish the province of Quebec in 1763. The British enacted the Quebec Act in 1774, which allowed for the preservation of French language and culture in Quebec and established the province as a distinct entity within the British Empire. However, British rule was not always accepted by the French-speaking population of Quebec. In 1837, a rebellion broke out in Quebec led by French-speaking rebels who were unhappy with British rule. The rebellion was eventually put down, but it highlighted the tension between French and British interests in Canada. British colonization also had a profound impact on Indigenous communities in Canada. The British displaced Indigenous communities from their lands, particularly in the West, and established policies that sought to assimilate Indigenous peoples into European culture. These policies, such as the residential school system, had devastating effects on Indigenous communities and continue to impact Indigenous peoples today. Today, the legacy of French and British colonization in Canada is still felt, particularly in Quebec, which has a distinct culture and language that is different from the rest of Canada. The impact of colonization on Indigenous communities is also an ongoing issue, with efforts being made to address the injustices and trauma inflicted on Indigenous peoples. Part 4: Confederation and the Birth of Canada. In 1867, the British North America Act was passed, which united the provinces of Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick into the Dominion of Canada. This event is known as Confederation and marks the birth of Canada as a nation. The idea of Confederation was born out of a desire to unify the disparate British colonies in North America and to strengthen their political and economic ties. The province of Canada, which included Ontario and Quebec, had been experiencing political turmoil, and there was a growing sense that a union of the British colonies would provide stability and economic growth. The negotiations that led to Confederation were complex and involved compromises from various regions and interest groups. Key figures in the negotiations included John A. Macdonald, George Brown, and George Etienne Cartier. Confederation was not without its challenges. The new Dominion of Canada was vast and diverse, with significant cultural and linguistic differences between its various regions. Indigenous peoples were not included in the negotiations, and the new government was slow to address their rights and concerns. However, over time, Canada grew and developed into a stable and prosperous nation. The country expanded westward, with the completion of the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1885, connecting the country from coast to coast. Immigrants from around the world came to Canada, contributing to the country's diversity and multiculturalism. Canada also became known for its progressive policies, such as universal health care, and its commitment to peacekeeping on the global stage. Canada played a significant role in both World War I and II, and its contributions to international peacekeeping missions have been widely recognized. Today, Confederation remains an important part of Canada's identity and history, and the country continues to evolve and grow as a multicultural and inclusive society. Part 5: World War I and II. Canada played a significant role in World War I, with over 600,000 Canadians serving in the war effort. At the time, Canada was still a relatively young country, having only been formed through Confederation in 1867. However, Canada's contributions to the war effort were significant, with Canadian troops playing a key role in several major battles, including Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele. Canadian soldiers were known for their bravery and determination, and their contributions to the war effort helped to establish Canada as a respected military power on the global stage. However, the war also had a significant impact on Canada's society and economy, with women entering the workforce in greater numbers and technological advancements driving industry and innovation. World War II. Canada also played a significant role in World War II, with over 1 million Canadians serving in the war effort. Canada declared war on Germany in September 1939, and Canadian troops were involved in major battles such as Dieppe, Juno Beach, and the liberation of the Netherlands. Canada also played a significant role in the war effort on the home front, with Canadians contributing to war production and rationing essential goods. The war had a significant impact on Canada's economy and society, with technological advancements and increased government involvement in industry leading to a period of significant growth and prosperity. Canadian soldiers were known for their bravery and determination in World War II, and their contributions to the war effort helped to establish Canada as a respected military power on the global stage. After the war, Canada continued to play a significant role in international peacekeeping missions and became known for its progressive policies, such as universal health care and social welfare programs. Overall, Canada's contributions to World War I and II helped to shape the country's identity and establish its place as a respected global power. The sacrifices of Canadian soldiers and their impact on Canadian society and economy are still felt today. Part 6, Post-War Era and Modern Canada. After World War II, Canada experienced significant social and political changes, as the country entered a period of post-war prosperity and growth. During this time, Canada became known for its progressive policies and commitment to social welfare. One of the key changes that took place in the post-war era was increased immigration to Canada. In the years following World War II, Canada welcomed immigrants from around the world, who brought with them their own cultures, languages, and traditions. This immigration helped to shape Canada's multicultural identity and contributed to the country's economic and social growth. During the post-war era, Canada also became known for its commitment to social welfare programs, such as universal healthcare and old-age pensions. These programs helped to establish Canada as a more egalitarian society, with a strong safety net for those in need. Canada also continued to play a significant role in international peacekeeping missions, with Canadian soldiers serving in conflicts around the world. This commitment to peacekeeping helped to establish Canada as a respected global power, with a reputation for promoting peace and stability on the world stage. In the latter part of the 20th century, Canada continued to evolve and grow, with significant social and political changes taking place. The country became more diverse and multicultural, with increased recognition and support for Indigenous peoples and their rights. Canada also became a leader in areas such as environmental conservation and renewable energy, as well as in areas such as LGBTQ+ rights and gender equality. Today, Canada is a modern and diverse country, with a strong economy and a reputation for social justice and inclusivity. The country's commitment to progressive policies and international peacekeeping has helped to establish its place as a respected global power, and its contributions to culture, science, and innovation continue to be celebrated around the world. Canada's history is rich and complex, shaped by Indigenous cultures, European colonization, wars, and political and social changes. Today, Canada continues to be a beacon of progress and inclusivity, with a commitment to peace and prosperity for all its citizens. Hope you like the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Bye-bye.